where's the rest of the wine? Rebecca has.
Hello, everybody. My name is Rebecca Nelson, the Wine Club Director here at Becker Vineyard, welcoming you to yet another virtual tasting. We're very excited again for tonight's wine that we're pouring. We're pouring our 2017 Chardonnay Reserve, all from the Canada Family Vineyard. We've got Dr. Richard Becker tonight again. We also have our winemaker, Jon Leahy, and hang on to your hats, everybody. Our general manager, Bret Perrenoud, is going to be taking my place here as soon as I'm done with the introduction. So he's been mentioned quite a few times, but you haven't seen him on one of these yet. So he's going to be joining. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Doc and John. I hope you all enjoy. Cheers, everyone.
Hey, wait a minute. I didn't know Bret was coming into this thing.
Bret's coming.
Doc, would you lead us in today?
Well, just to remember that this is a little bit of our Texas reflection of what happens in New York at 7 o'clock every night all over that wonderful city. People come out on their balconies and fire escapes and open their windows and try to do something to deflect all the terrible things that have happened as a result of this war against COVID-19. Anyway, this is our departure, and please take this half hour of comments about a wonderful Chardonnay as a release from that pressure. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. I will toast to that. Hey, Bret, welcome.
Hello, Bret.
But do you have your glass? Perfect. So first thing off for everybody at home. Hey, whoa. Time out. First thing off, I would like everybody to pick up their glass and make sure that you have this fine wine that you're pouring tonight, which is our 2017 Canada Family Vineyards Reserve Chardonnay. So go ahead and give it a swirl and a taste. You know, we started tasting this about 15 minutes before the broadcast started, and I have it in our stemless oaked wine glass by Riedel, and it's just fantastic. The nose that I'm getting out of here. A slightly different glass. Why don't you give it a swirl of taste and tell us what you think?
Bret, yeah.
No, it's your turn to taste, Doc.
Okay. I think this is a phenomenal white Burgundy. I would never identify this as a grape or a wine from Texas. So if you handed it to me at Clos de Vougeot or somewhere in Napa, it has all the character of a wonderful white Burgundy. It has honey and lime blossom and almond and toffee and just a wonderful job. I think a year and a half in oak, John, in French oak primarily, and I think it's a wonderful tribute to the fruit grown by Brenda and Dwayne Canada. I think just marvelous.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. So, for all of you at home, the three of us, this is with the exception of missing Joe, this is our tasting panel, and we come up to these blends. Bret, which glass do you prefer?
Well, I have both, and obviously they're the exact same bowl shape, but one has a stem and one doesn't. But there's really not much difference currently. Obviously, I think that the preconceived notion about a glass that doesn't have a stem is it's not as elegant. But I think it was one of the later generations of Riedel in their family that developed the stemless glass because it would fit in their cabinet, right? So I think that currently it tastes great out of both of them, but I think that it's a preference of what you like, So.
Oh yeah, I actually am really, really glad that we chose this glass tonight. That you guys had them out. I was drinking it earlier out of our normal stemware, and I thought it was great, but this has really allowed that nose to come forward. It's completely enamored by it. So, a little bit about the Canada Vineyard. So, Bret, last time, I know you heard on the background, but when we were talking about the Cabernet, so when you first spoke with the Canadas, and I don't remember what year you said, it was 2007, I think, or 2006 when you met them?
The first vintage that we got from them was 2007 for the Cabernet. It was kind of a funny story. We were in Fredericksburg at Grape Camp. So in Texas, we have two different times of the year that wineries and growers get together. One is for our annual conference, and then the other one is for Grape Camp, and that used to be held like way out in Junction at the Texas Tech Center back in the day, but they moved it to Fredericksburg, and I had to get back to the winery to go to a luncheon, and I left the Grape Camp luncheon, and I had a lunch ticket, and I basically walked out the door and I said, "Here, give this to somebody." And the person that was running it was actually Katie Jane of all people. I barely knew her back then. And I said, "Here's my lunch ticket. What do you want for it?" And I said, "Give me a grape contract." And so back in those days, Dr. Becker would send me to Grape Camp and to all these different things, and I had contracts in my hand basically. And people always ask, "Well, how could you do that?" It's pretty simple. Those contracts are so strict on quality, measures, and it's the same contract we've used for 20 years. That at that time I left, go back to the winery, and I handed her my lunch ticket, and I came back and she said, "This is Miss Canada. She had your lunch." And I'm like, "Well, awesome, maybe this will work out." And the next day she came to the winery. She said, "I got 2.5 acres of Cabernet, and I'd love to sell it to Becker." And I said, "Well, I'm going to take all the credit for this lunch ticket." She goes, "Well, no, I was coming to see you anyway, being that you had such a great reputation, in the States." So it was kind of a neat meeting.
Right. I every time I've met with and it's been fantastic. There's something about you at ease, and they have got to be some of the happiest people on the face of this earth, especially when they're out on their property taking you through their vineyard. You can see pride of place for sure. So, Doc, what argument did we get into about this wine the most? Do you think it was the amount of oak that I used, or how soon you wanted to take it out of barrel?
Is there a difference? I thought you captured a great balance between oak expression and fruit in this wine, to my palate. I don't think it would be different if we did about 1.5 years in oak, John. Is that right? And then
just slightly more than 1.5 years, but yeah, I think it was about 20 months.
So I was trying for 18 months, and finally at 20 months, I think it couldn't be better. I wouldn't change anything you've done. I love the vanilla expression. Yeah.
Yeah, I really do too. So it's 100% oak, fermented and aged. Now the breakdown between new and used, considering, but we did this particular vintage was all oak, and so this is about at the Canada's Vineyard. And Bret, you're gonna have to jump in and tell. I'm trying to go off of memory, but the old vineyard, the old block that Brenda talked about last week, is about 1/2 acre, and then she's got what 5 acres of the new block.
Yeah, 5 acres of the current planting. And again, I'll jump a little bit ahead as far as people always ask, why is there not more Chardonnay in Texas? And it really boils down to is like it makes no sense to grow it. And the reason why it makes no sense is because of how early it buds out. And we started our virtual tastings, and we kind of made Wednesdays kind of grape grower focused. So I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about that growing aspect. Her Chardonnay will bud out. It could bud out as early as the 1st of April. And when I talk to her, normally the latest is about the 15th of April. That could be a month before the Cabernet breaks bud. So for people that don't understand how that works is, if the grape wakes up and the freeze comes down and hits it when it's green, it'll take the fruit off for that year. And if it's still dormant, then it won't mess it up. And so it's just a hard deal to put Chardonnay in when you know that it's going to be a month earlier than some other varieties. And so it's just not a good, maybe business decision all the time. But I think that from that old vineyard that we keep referring to, the old vineyard is 1/2 acre. She told me that it was planted in the early 80s. So when she took it over, it was in 2003. And it was, I think, right after she retired from teaching, and she farmed it for a couple years, trying to get it back into its, it had been abandoned for many years. And I think the first year they made jelly out of it. And the second year after they cut, it had 4 cordons going every direction. And they cut it back to 2, made jelly the first year. And then the second year she produced 640 pounds, which, is not that much. And they sold it to a little winery called Lightcatcher, and that went on until maybe 3 or 4 years ago when we started buying the rest of the Chardonnay that they had, and then we were able to get the contract on that older block too. So,
Yeah, and so 2016 really started my love affair with this Chardonnay, and that was the year that we harvested that older block really young. We thought we were going to make a sparkling cuvee out of it. So we harvested it about 18 and a half bricks. We brought it in. We did everything that we needed to do to make a sparkling. But a year later, Doc came in and started tasting it and said, what about blending it with the regular? So we went back for a second permutation with the regular Chardonnay and blended it back, and that acid really did a brilliant job. So this is the follow-up from that vintage. Now, 16 and 17 we had available at the same time at the winery for a brief period of time on the overlap. But the 17, we decided to take the older block slightly less ripe than the newer block as a general plan because of that. And you can't argue with the results here. I think we did the right thing. We did through all mallow. So Rachel mentioned there was about 3.5 grams of malic acid when we started, and it gave it a nice little smoother edge to it. There's a nice little butteriness to it. It's not over the top there. It's not like a butter slathered oak 2x4. This is more of a balanced offering, I think. I want everybody, as it warms up in their glass, I want them to take another sip. There are people signing in here, left, right, and center, saying there are a couple of them that said I wasn't looking forward to the Chardonnay, but this is really awesome, and that's a great compliment. So thank you for that, from all of us. But Chardonnay goes through a love-hate relationship. I think most people have with it. There's people that anything but Chardonnay, and then there are people who are like, I love Chardonnay, but I want it all stainless steel. I am more of a traditionalist. I like that barrel-aged and Surly-aged wine. We did not rack this wine until the day before blending, so it sat for almost 2 years on its original lees. We stirred it for the first couple of months, and then we just put it away in the barrel room and let Mother Nature take its course.
So I think, Doc, will you tell us your love of this wine, or like Chardonnay and the region that it comes from and all that kind of good stuff? I mean, what makes this special to you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Interesting, the derivation of the word Chardonnay comes from a little town, a Roman town in Burgundy between Macon and Dijon called Cardonicum, which means place of the thistles. And it's possible that the part of the parentage of Chardonnay is a white grape that the Romans drank. Maybe a cross between with Pinot Noir and Muscat. But it's been around for a long time in Burgundy, and but what strikes me is just how much I would think this is a Burgundian wine, not a Texas wine or a California wine or Virginia wine. Really surprising.
Well, yeah, it's just so good. Okay, Brett, I got to ask about the label because this was great. For those of you at home, when we do labels, and just to remind everybody what the label looks like, in case you've forgotten what the bottle looks like now that you're drinking, the label discussion would seem to be pretty straightforward. But Brett, lead us through this because this is an interesting follow-up to another wine that we had in our program.
Number one, labels are never straightforward. And
no, they aren't.
I agree.
And one of the things I guess that we have a lot of meetings and we have marketing meetings and we sell wines that are just in the winery and some in distribution. So this label was actually, that new label style was developed for a Cabernet that was supposed to go in the Cabernet section in Texas retailer. So the question is, when you shop for wine and you're a consumer, do you walk in the store, do you go to the Texas section, which some stores have, or do you go to the Cabernet section or the Chardonnay section? And so there's been so many people that I've met over the years that say that I'm a cab drinker, so I go to the cab section. And so we made this label, the rendition of this label, which is, a morphed version of the tree that we have on most of our labels, or a Cabernet that was supposed to go into main distribution. And I liked it so much that when we made this 17 Reserve Chard, we found this heavy bottle that looked cool. And I thought this is the time that if we can ever make enough Chardonnay to put this out in the market, that this would be the perfect package. And so the other funny story behind this is this package does not have a capsule. It has, it's got a naked top. Okay. So it has no capsule on it. And it sounds cool. It was kind of hip at one time in the wine world, and the real story behind it is we got the bottle. It was going to take 3 or 4 months to get the capsule made, and Dr. Becker wanted it released immediately, and so we went ahead and put it with no capsule. So that's the story behind the capsule. Okay?
That just means I liked it a lot. That's what all that is. Yeah.
Well, and I think too. Remember, John, that the 17 harvest of the Chardonnay, when the chemistry came in, I just remember that there was a lot of fruit. I mean, tonnage-wise, it was a big harvest. And I think that the numbers, as far as chemistry goes, I think you walked in and said this is like the perfect chemistry, like we would see in the southern Napa Valley.
It really was. It did remind me of Carneros. And for those of you at home, yes, where I originally came from was out in Northern California. So my common reference sometimes gets a little old when I refer back to, but we refer back to what we know in common. So one of the things I love about Texas Chardonnay is the fact that when people drink it, that look on their face, like we literally have been accused of not giving them Chardonnay from Texas. And it's like, well, you can sit there all day long and tell me I'm not telling you the truth, but I really wouldn't call Brenda Canada a liar if I were you, just in case you ever meet her. No, I am highly impressed with the fruit quality. And Bret, you're absolutely right. That chemistry did come in near perfect. It looked textbook perfect. And that's almost nerve-wracking when you're in the winery and you get something that beautiful, and then you're like, how many ways to Sunday can I mess this up? And that's the first thing that goes through. And the second thing is, the first thing I need to do is get it into press. So we got it through the press, we got it into the barrels, and it just took care of itself. It was one of the few wines that basically made itself. And I hate to say that because I really do something at the winery every once in a while, but this wine certainly qualified for that. Okay, I have to ask too, Doc, why would you? So we've got a question, and it just popped up in front of me. Why would you prefer using the term white Burgundy over Chardonnay?
Well, because Chardonnay is the white grape of Burgundy. So when you talk about white Burgundy, you're talking about Chardonnay grown and made in Burgundy, and it has special characteristics different from Chardonnay from California, different from Chardonnay from Texas. So it's just when you're in that region and tasting those wines, you kind of come under the spell of fruit grown in that microclimate and treated with that oak, with those yeasts and by those winemakers. I think it's one of the great things on the planet, to my palate. The other thing about white Burgundy is it takes a long time for it to develop, and this wine, I think this wine is very young, even as delicious as it is right now. In 5 and 10 years, this is going to be a great player, I think. But I say that about all our wines. So.
Well, I'm really enjoying it. Okay, Bret, what would you pair with it?
Everything. No. We drink this a lot at home, and I love Marcona almonds, and that's something that you just kind of sit there and eat. But as far as like a main dish, any chicken dish, any fish, this has got enough backbone to it that it would hold up to a lot of different things.
Doc?
Well, without a doubt, the great white cheese of Burgundy would be one, a triple cream cheese. Délice de Bourguignon would just light this up. Many other things would be good, but that would be my first choice.
Okay, I'm calling you on the carpet because, Bret, you remember every time in our tastings how it's like, what we really need is that perfect Texas pecan.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Not the big ones, those small ones, the real good ones, and don't do anything to them. Don't put any salt on them, just the pecan.
Yeah.
Well, this has been paired with pecans in our bites tasting, I think, for the last four times we've done it. So.
Yeah, and every time it does very well. I'm not saying it does, but I just think it's funny that something as simple as a pecan just brings the flavor out in this wine, and that really is.
It has to be a fresh pecan from a year in which the pecans are fully filled out in the shell, not salted, not buttered, not fried,
Mm-hmm.
but try
Mm-hmm.
it, and you'll be amazed at what it'll bring to the tasting.
Oh, I wholeheartedly agree. I am going to go and tell you that I love this simple pasta with Alfredo sauce, but it's because I use a little bit of the Chardonnay in the sauce. So I love that pairing completely. Okay, a couple more
So,
questions here, and if you've got questions, folks at home, please feel free to type them in.
there it
We'd
is.
love to answer as many as we can here. Got another
Jon,
question here. What does aged surly mean? It, okay. There's your pecan.
well, try it.
I-
Mm.
So for the question, aging surly, it literally means on the lees. So we don't rack the heavy sediment out of the barrel. As long as the sediment, or what we call lees, in the bottom of the barrel, as long as it's healthy and there's no off flavors or off odors, you can leave the lees on the wine on the lees for its duration of aging. And as a matter of fact, it provides a lot of natural protection to the wine to do it that way, a lot of antioxidant protection. So it also allows us to age that wine with a lower amount of SO2 without any worries. We just don't touch it, we let it age on its own. So it's a preferred method. Okay, Bret, next question I'm going to put in your ballpark. We have folks here. Keith writes that we're doing a side-by-side with a bottle of 2016. Could you talk about the differences? We're liking the 2016 the 2017 being the winner for these folks, but you're the one who decided to put both of them on the tasting bar at the same time. Why?
Well, I wanted to hold the 17 for another 6 months, and I got overruled, obviously. Uh, but I do think that one of the things we've been able to do, like that I think is cool, is that when you come to the winery, you can try multiple vintages of wines, whether it's in our library tasting or whether it's these other things that we're doing. And so, again, since Chardonnay is in such short supply, we don't necessarily feel like we have to release it. I think that we bottled this one in August, and we didn't release it until November or December. I think our plan was to hold it even longer, and I think that the guys whose name on the front gate came in one day and said it's time to let the 17 out of the box. And I do think that, again, those two growing years were so different. I keep going back to this, is that growers and the way grapes are grown is what you're tasting in the bottle. We do everything that we can do at the winery to make it as good as we can, but the vintage in wine is so important from year to year because of the growing conditions. So at the winery, we could make wine like beer, and it's got the same fermentation temperature and it's got the same exact everything, but the growing season is really what makes a vintage. And so, and I don't know that a lot of people understand that. I know that the people that drink wine a lot understand it, but I constantly get people coming to the winery and go, well, what makes a good year? I read in Wine Spectator that 2000 whatever was a good year, and I'm like, okay, where? What part of the world and what part of the weather? And so again, if you're comparing the 16 to the 17, think about it in terms of, we try to do the same things that we did each year, but the difference in those are probably you're seeing in the actual, what happened in the climate. So, and I personally think that if they're trying the 16 and the 17 is going to be a little brighter right now. Obviously, it's newer wine. It's going to be a little fresher. That 17 is going to have another year, in the bottle, and so it's going to be a little more muted. And again, there's things that kind of change that all the way around. So,
Right.
Yeah, I think the 16 expresses toasted oak flavors more than the 17 does.
And I'm the one in our tasting group that likes those oaky, chewy, like big, heavy oak bomb Chardonnays, and that's my preference. But again, I think that there's a balance in there. And I think one thing that we're proud of is that when you try our wines, if you're talking about oak or alcohol or fruit, our goal is to have a balance between those three things. You don't have an oak bomb, you don't have an alcohol bomb. We talk about that a lot on Saturdays.
Oh yeah, we do. We absolutely go into it because, as for instance, this wine is 14.8% alcohol by volume, and it does not taste hot, and that's because of the aforementioned balance. So I think that's very important. So, any last words on this particular wine before we announce next week's lineup?
I think it's drinking wonderfully right now. I'm very proud of it, Jon. Bret, nice job.
I switched glasses.
So,
Cheers.
exactly. So, Bret, what are our three double golds next week? We've got the Oh gosh, my mind is slipping. I know it's the
I
Sauvignon
got
Blanc.
them. I got them because I had to move them all today. So
Okay.
2018 Sauvignon Blanc, the 2016 Reserve Merlot, and then the 2017 Wilmot Cab. And
Right.
again, for you guys, I mean, double golds are double golds at different places, but at the San Francisco Chronicle or the San Francisco International, it's a big deal.
It is.
And when there's 60 judges that taste these wines, and if one of them gives you a gold, you don't get a double gold. And so one of the things that we hold very dear about all the work that we do is trying to make sure that we validate our medals. And people joke with me all the time because, if it's, it's kind of the old adage, if you're not first, you're last. We talk a lot about these because they're very important and it just means a lot for the work that we did. And so when we had to keep going through the virtual tastings, I asked Dr. Becker and Joe, I said, will you let me release some of the library wines that you guys had that were kind of stored back for these virtual tastings? And it was a pretty quick answer. It was, yes, go ahead. So I just think next week's going to be a lot of fun.
I think too.
We've got follow up after that with the Riedel comparison. So again, I'm sitting here doing these two glasses. They're really the same glass without a stem, but the week after that, we're going to do a Riedel comparison where we're going to be able to ship you a box of 3 Riedel glasses. The following week after that, maybe the wine club wines that we're shipping out will do that tasting. So,
well, I also want to tell everybody at home, I don't know about you guys, but this is regular market Tempranillo that we're tasting. And so I am going to make a hamburger with caramelized onions and a raspberry chipotle sauce for the hamburger. And because it's Food Friday, so I'm eating it online. So if you all want to make your favorite hamburger or beef or even pizza and join me and talk about it, because that's what we're doing this week on Friday. And I'm kind of looking forward to it because I haven't had a good hamburger in a while. Anyway, I want to thank everybody at home. Please write your questions in. We will answer some in the Q&A after this broadcast. And if you haven't yet ordered your wine for next week, please do so. We'd be happy to fulfill that order. And if this wine is your favorite and you want some more, just give us a call at the winery or send us an email. We'd be happy to get you some more there. So everybody at home, cheers, and here's to good health and great wine. You all take care of yourselves.
Cheers.